Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, awesome. Every episode I say I'm so excited, and I'm trying to stop saying that. So I just said awesome. But today, back with us again, you can hear him already. Ryan Singer is back. Yay. How are you?
Hey, Karen.
Thanks for coming
I'm doing great.
on.
I mean, I think it's, I don't know. I feel like it's okay to be excited every time you do an interview or have an episode of your podcast. It seems like you should be, right?
I should be, right? And I can't remember. There were a couple where I was like, oh, but I probably said I was still excited. But I am really excited.
You don't want to name names? You don't want to name names on those?
There were a couple that I was like, I'll do that favor. And then it was like, uh-oh. But mostly I am, especially this second year. How long have you been doing your podcast?
I'm in my sixth year, I think. I've been doing it for I guess I'm in my seventh year.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think I started in did I start in 2011? Oh, no, 2013? Yeah, I know I had my 6th year anniversary in January. So
holy cow. So I can't remember dates on anything, so I don't know when I started, but I know it's been I feel like I'm in the second year, but I'll probably say that for 14 years. Like, people get mad at me because they're always like, how long have we known each other? And I'm like, 2 months. And they're like, we went to grade school together. And
yes.
I can't remember. But so much. It's always great to talk to you. I had a couple of topics in mind, but I was like, hey, it's Ryan. We're going to talk forever. And this is coming out we're taping, but it's coming out, I think April, May, June. We might already be in June, May or June.
Wow, you're that far ahead in your work, huh?
Yeah, I do them all and stack them up, and then the bonus episodes are the ones that, if I do them, I just pop them right up. And I've done a few in this quarantine, but yeah, I'm a very nervous person. I don't like to have bills. I pay bills ahead, and I seem to think at some point I'm going to be on the run from the law. And I figure if the bills don't stack up or anything, no one will look for me. I'll have a 2 months ahead. 2 months ahead.
Yeah. And when you get out of jail, you'll still have a good credit score. That's what you're worried about.
Exactly. And have you ever thought about, this is a weird topic, but I've thought about it so many times, about you can't really fake your death anymore. Right?
Yeah. It's, well, okay, let me think about this because...
and I'll walk you through it.
Okay. There are pretty good, it's pretty easy to get the internet to spread misinformation. Okay. So
good angle.
This is something that we're working with. This is an advantage when it comes to one who wants to ungrid themselves.
Nice.
Now,
have you thought about this before?
Yes, I have. Oh. So you have to have some foresight for sure. This isn't this is a marathon, not a sprint, obviously.
Right. But
so I think you have to be at least 4 years out.
Okay. So
minimum.
Stockpile the cash.
Yeah, you stockpile cash. And if you do it right, you don't need a ton of it because you go somewhere that's super cheap, because that means people don't want to be there. So you have what you have is you have a situation where you're not going to have a lot of foot traffic around wherever you go, as long as it doesn't become a hip place to go all of a sudden. Now,
right.
So you can get super cheap land, somewhere where you can grow food.
Well, that's the thing. Now, so here's the first part of this. I love the fact that we were joking around, and the minute I said fake your own death, you got serious and had all the answers. Because it's so funny. This is a weird, I've actually been looking to buy some land. I have just enough, but I wasn't thinking of that. And then my friend was like, you can get a plot in Lancaster for $10,000. And I was like, I think I could do that, but then I don't know if that land floods or whatever. You know what I mean? Obviously there's a reason that land is $10,000. But
where's Lancaster?
It's in it's an hour out of LA.
Okay. North, south, east, west?
North,
Northeast?
you go a 5 north and then take the 14 over.
Is it head east or?
East,
I'm guessing
yes.
it's east.
I don't think it goes west. Is there more 14 west? So you go east, and it's very hot, and it's a little hillbilly. But I think I'm worried that everybody's right. We're going to be moving out of the cities, and I might have a little plot of land right there. And I'm looking at trailers, tiny houses. The toilets are a bad setup. You can't do that. You got to look at trailer park kind of thing. That's what I think I could afford.
That's interesting. Well, I've thought a lot about this, and I'm on Zillow and like Realtor.com all the time.
Me
too. I used to be like looking at land, and like you can get super cheap land in Joshua Tree. Like obviously desert land is going to be cheaper.
Wait, and by the way, everyone, I forgot to turn off my sound, so you didn't get a text. That was on the tape.
Oh, I didn't even hear it.
Oh, it went ding. So wait, now where's Joshua Tree?
Joshua Tree is east of here. Okay. Yeah, about an hour and a half. Hour and a half, 2 hours. It's in the desert. So you just take the 10 east out of Los Angeles. It's a straight shot. Like you pass Coachella and then you end up in Joshua Tree. Okay. So it's a kind of it's a relatively short drive, but it is the desert. That's why land is cheaper out there and property is cheaper, because you have to kind of like dig a well. Right. You have to figure out electric if you're not already on the grid with it. So that might not be the ideal place. I mean, it gets also incredibly hot during the summer. And cool at night. So you have to take into consideration like what kind of furniture or things will degrade quickly in that kind of temperature. Right. So there are like restrictions on the things, like if you have like an acoustic guitar, is that good for that area? That kind of thing. So it's the little things people don't really think about when it comes to that. But I love the idea of buying super cheap land somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then kind of having that as a place. I do think, I forget what book it was. I read it like 15 years or 10 years ago at least. And it was about human beings eventually, and not because of climate crisis or anything like that, but sooner or later human beings will kind of circle back to a tribal.
I think that's what we're going to.
A tribal system, because, well, maybe for the sake of the environment, and people will just become overwhelmed, and I think they'll want to go back into a smaller communities.
I think it's going to be about 5G. I think people are going to really start to get sick. I'm very anti 5G, and I think people are going to be like, yesterday I was riding my bike and I FaceTime my parents because they live in New York. So I FaceTime, they get to look at the pretty houses, and I'm driving and I see there the guy's got the marking right in his backyard and it says coordinates for 5G tower. And I almost wanted to knock on the door and go, do you have any idea how sick you're about to get? Because I just think it's terrible, but they're getting paid to be there. I think that is the stuff that's going to push people out. That's what I think this virus is about. It's funny that you mentioned acoustic guitar, because I once manifested a harp, and I don't know how I did it, but I wanted a harp. So I don't know who I said it to. My friend goes, I have a friend, she's rich and she owns like 5. This woman I don't even know lends me a $2,000 harp, which, by the way, is amazing. Even out of tune, it's beautiful. And then I was like, it gets so hot in my apartment, I had to return it because I was terrified it was going to warp.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's like little things like that I don't even think about, when it comes to, there's a lot to plan. And I think that's why people have become so specialized in certain areas of doing that. So
you got your money. You got your money, your land. But if you own the land, can't they find you on that? How would you buy that without people coming to look for you there?
Well, this is the biggest obstacle, in my opinion. And again, I'm no expert on faking my own death, or am I? Is my name really Ryan Singer? That's what you have to ask yourself. I think the biggest obstacle is your identity, especially nowadays.
Right.
So it's not that hard to just, not engage in social media, right? That's right. How, signing up on mailing lists with email addresses, having an IP address, and having a cell phone. These are the main ways people let themselves get tracked. Yeah. So if you just don't get on the internet,
Right.
At least on your own handheld device or internet running into your house or wherever it is you're saying, it's not that easy it's just as difficult to find you as it used to be.
But you got your cameras everywhere.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I think the sci-fi idea of how easy it is to find somebody with facial recognition on on like the worldwide grid of cameras that are connected to each other. It is my belief anyway, and I could be totally wrong, that you can't, a bunch of people just can't be in a control room and then like say, find Ryan Singer's face.
Right.
And now all the cameras suddenly are hooked up to each other. And then 10 minutes later, like, we found them. It's like, that's bullshit. That's not.
No, I don't think we're there.
That's not going to happen.
No, but
we're definitely not there yet.
I don't like that clear though at the airport. I don't like clear.
Oh, I was actually thinking about doing that because you can just get through the line so easily. I
think it's going to be a while before I do that. It's going to be a while before I get a vaccination for COVID-19, and it's going to be a while before I what was the other one I don't like? I can't remember. Oh, DNA. I'm not doing any of those DNA tests. That's all logged by the government. All the 23andMe stuff.
The 23andMe. And you know what? I haven't, and I've always been adverse to doing that myself. But here's the thing that we forget. If anyone remotely closely related to us has done it, they don't need us to do it. They've already got us. Really? So if you have like a first cousin who has done it, or an uncle or an aunt, or, or maybe a parent who has ever done it, you're already mapped out. They've already pretty much got you because you're going to be so closely related. Your DNA is going to be so similar to that. Not to mention you've been going to a doctor for your entire life and having your blood taken. So to think that they don't already potentially, if they want it. Now, here's the thing about all this this is like the space I'm moving into, which is kind of new territory for me. And it was listening to Noam Chomsky, an old Noam Chomsky talk from like the late 90s that kind of started making this resonant, because it's all the same shit still happening now that he was talking about back then. But he was talking about the propaganda campaign that the right, or let's say conservatives, have been spreading, and capitalism in general, that has been spreading since the beginning of capitalism, about the idea that socialism is an evil, right? Or that the government, specifically that phrase, the government, right? So they've been hammering that the government is the bad guy for decades and decades and decades. It's a relentless propaganda campaign. So now all of us, and it's very purposeful, it's very on purpose. So now all of us, without even realizing it, we hear the phrase, I don't want the government, blah, 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 blah. And it's a nefarious, it's an evil phrase, right? And we don't realize that that was very carefully constructed for us to believe that. But here's the thing. And at the heart of it, at the end of the day, it's people who work in the government. And I would argue that 99.9% of those people who consist of government workers feel the same way, right? They don't want to be spied on, all this stuff. Maybe there's that very small percentage that's kind of like an evil mastermind, they have those type of personalities, and they just kind of like they're driven by greed and all this other stuff and power. Yeah. But at the end of the day, 99.9% of the people who consist of the government are people who have families and all that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to be very conscious and aware of my bias against, quote unquote, the government when it comes to the way I'm forming my opinions. Now, like I said, this is new territory for me to be moving into because I've always been on the other side of the coin on this. But,
well, that's very interesting because I am, in fact, I'm a Bernie Sanders person, and the fact that no one saw that you know what would be great during a pandemic? National health care, where everyone had the same information on the same, like that didn't occur to anyone. And I'm definitely on this side because it's the old saying of, well, I don't, it's like the DMV. You know what? I went into the DMV and spent 5 minutes and got a new license. So I don't have a problem. The mail comes all the time. I have this screaming about what's wrong with the government. It's what's wrong in the White House. And I don't just mean Trump. I mean, why are people buying $50,000? Like that was where the spending goes wrong. But I'm with you. In fact, I did a podcast on the dark net, and that is where that's a sales market. That's capitalism right there. That's not, you know what I mean? It's a mess, but that's capitalism. I'm with you on this. I don't think the government is quote unquote bad, but you said that's new wave for you.
Yeah, I mean, I used to, like, we're talking, upwards of 20 years ago, I was deep into conspiracy world. I have slowly but surely extricated myself from the mud of the conspiracy theory world because it's pure darkness there.
And it's never ending because one conspiracy goes to another, then you got to worry about that guy. Yeah. I noticed a trend. When I first started trying to remove myself from being obsessed with it all, it's because I noticed a trend that everything was becoming a conspiracy theory. Right. And I kind of knew, I was like, well, if I stay in here, I won't be able to believe anything at some point. Right. And unfortunately, I was kind of onto something, at least in my opinion on that. Because now everything is fake news. There's nothing that's real. Any school shooting within 30 seconds, there's the conspiracy is being laid out on the internet. It's like these people are still in the hospital. They're not even like dead yet. And now people are propagating the conspiracy theory about how they're crisis actors and they're not really dead. And it's just like, and wow. These 3-year-olds didn't have a Facebook page. Every 3-year-old has that's the other thing. And I'm not on board at all with QAnon, whatever that is. I find that very dangerous because that's the pizza place. They went in the gun with the pizza place. But I think, that phrase, the devil will tell you 10 truths so he can tell you one lie. I think I'm not on board with that. I'm with you on that. Yeah.
We don't need to get into the QAnon thing too deep, but like, for me, it's, none of us like to admit when we're wrong. Mm-hmm. Some of us will eventually admit we are wrong when faced with a mountain of evidence. Others of us will just continue to dig our heels into our original stance.
That's me.
And I feel like that's the QAnon crowd. And it's, it's like, to me, the joke is this, like, what's the bigger science fiction movie? The Matrix, right? Mm-hmm. Or the idea that Donald Trump is the one person that a secret military group of top-level generals hand-selected to rescue the country from the evil cabal, right? And was, in fact, working with Mueller on the report behind the scenes and conducting secret military tribunals where they were ridding the world of the cabal, the super wealthy and elite who have been trying to cull the population and all this kind of stuff. And he, in fact, is QAnon, right? And like he's giving so many like secret messages that you won't be able to understand until like 9 months later. It's like this guy was a reality TV star,
right?
And now in these people's mind, he is a sci-fi messiah in that kind of way, right? Yeah. And it's, we all want something to believe in, and I don't begrudge the people who believe in QAnon that fact, because it's true. We all want something to cling on to, and when we're faced with inexplicable tragedy, as the famous saying goes, the mind will scramble to try to find an alternative answer to why the thing that happened really happened. For example, like the COVID-19 thing. Like,
Right.
people don't want to believe that we are powerless in the face of Mother Nature's vengeance, if you want to label it that way. So instead of us being powerless to a virus that can pop up, they'd rather say, well, it's a human-made bioengineered virus. It's a weapon. And
Somebody left the door open.
And evil people did it on purpose to, maybe population control, or maybe it was an accident, got out, but it's man-made. We didn't stop it from happening, but they take some kind of comfort in the fact that it could have been stopped, right? Even though we failed to stop it, there was a possibility that we could have stopped it, even though we weren't able to. That gives like the illusion of control. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so people would rather have that illusion of control and instead of admitting, when faced with the sheer might and force of Mother Nature,
right,
that we are in fact powerless.
And I do think there's a couple of things, like, I do think George Bush didn't know about 9/11. I think others did. Like, there's some things, I guess that's almost the conspiracy whole, is to go, I do believe this, and I do believe there was foul play here, but you can't, it's a hole you don't want to get too deep in.
For sure. Because it's, at the bottom of every rabbit hole, there's someone trying to sell you a bunker. And that's, that's usually the case. And I agree with you on that. I don't think he was, George Bush was never an evil mastermind. He was like a party guy, a party kid who like grew up in a powerful family and then somehow found himself, in the positions he was in. And I think that movie about Dick Cheney starring Christian Bale was amazing.
It was. And also, I think George Bush wanted to be the baseball commissioner. That's all he wanted. Yeah.
I think you're probably right. And, it's like, I used to, 2011, this 9 years ago, Tom Simmons.
Oh, yeah. Hey, hold on. I was so interested, I forgot to take a break. Hang on.
Okay, let's take a break.
Okay, hang on. Hey, everybody, it's me doing an ad for me. That's right. I keep forgetting to say this at the end, so I had to take out an ad on my own podcast. First of all, thanks for listening, and I love all your feedback. If you have a comment or a story or just want to say hi, email me at karenrontowski@gmail.com. Also, go to karenrontowski.com or paranormalkaren.com, and you can get my tarot class. That's right. It took me 2 years to put it together. It's 8 classes, about an hour each. You will be reading tarot by the end. While you're there, sign up for my email list. Everyone should do this. I only send out an email about every 2 to 3 months, and it's filled with typos and misspellings, so I haven't been kidnapped, and that's the best way to keep up on comedy, dates, and whatever is new. While you're there, you can book a 30 or 60-minute tarot reading, or you can get a gift certificate for somebody else. I got a little bit of merch left. If you want a Paranormal Karen Shungite sticker for your phone to make it safer, you can email me about that, or I now sell Paranormal Karen reusable straws. You take them with you wherever you go. Maybe you're doing cocaine with someone that doesn't look like they're clean. Boom, you got your own straw. karenrontowski.com. Okay, we're back. So yes, I know Tom Simmons' comic in North Carolina, right?
Yeah. Tom's. I love that guy. 11 years ago or 9 years ago, Tom Simmons, comedian Billy Wayne Davis. I'm not sure if you know Billy Wayne.
I do. I have to say one thing. Tom Simmons has one of my favorite jokes ever. He says, I know I'm supposed to love everyone, but have you met everyone? That's my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great. He is, and he's a machine. He's a joke writing machine. It's really admirable and amazing. I mean, I really look up to Tom.
Yeah. So you were with him and Billy Wayne Davis. Yeah.
So the three of us put together a live comedy show called Kooks. And so this was 2011 was the first time we did it live. And we had the weekend at the Laughing Skull Comedy Club in Atlanta, Georgia. Uh-huh. So we booked the Kooks, and it was the 10-year anniversary of 9/11. It was in September of 2011 when our weekend was, right?
I was just going to joke and say, what was the date?
So it was just by happen chance that it lined up this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this was a comedy show that the three of us were doing about conspiracies and other weird stuff. And we wrote the show in the hotel that weekend. Like, we didn't have a show. We booked, and so we make the show on the fly in the hotel that weekend. And it gets to the point where after the first two shows, the door guys, or like when they're selling you the tickets at the box office, they start doing disclaimers to the people buying tickets and coming in, because we have people getting so upset in the audience.
Wow.
To the point where like they're standing up and yelling at us. One time we had somebody stand up and they're like, my brother ships out tomorrow to go to Afghanistan. You can't say this shit, right?
What were the conspiracies?
Because 9/11.
Oh, 9/11.
9/11 would come up in the show. And then the crazy thing that happened was somebody stood up and started yelling at us, like, you can't say this shit. You just shut the fuck up. My brother ships out tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody else stands up in the back and they say, I'm military and you need to shut the fuck up.
Oh,
the only reason your brother's shipping out tomorrow is so they can say shit like this. It's like going fucking wild in there, right?
Wow.
And Billy Wayne Davis is on stage like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, this is amazing. And I'm just like, this is fascinating. We're entering like new comedic ground. Simmons is like, what the fuck is going on? And then, by the next night, we were all like, we're really doing something with this show here. You know what I mean? Like, it's creating like a whole new experience that none of us are familiar with in our normal stand-up acts. And so then after that show, they started doing a disclaimer, and we didn't really have any problems after that, but because they were warning people about what was going on.
Wow.
But like, my stance on 9/11 was and still is to this day, if there was truly nothing to hide, they would release the security cam footage of the local businesses that were nearby that show the plane hitting the Pentagon.
Yeah.
If there was nothing to hide, they would disclose the evidence that would so quickly shut down most of the conspiracy theories about what happened.
Right.
That's all they have to do. And it's just, my stance is I have questions that remain unanswered that they won't answer. And I'm tired of this bullshit in this, like, when it comes to the government, like, of being like, well, we're the cool kids, so we get this information. Everybody else can't handle it. Okay, so we can handle it, but you guys couldn't handle it if we told you. It's like this idea that there can't be disclosure. I mean, disclosure is probably my number one issue of all things.
Right.
Whether it's UFOs or whether it's truth about tragedies that have happened, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a dark world to get sucked into, and
it makes and here's the other thing. I really like those movies, Loose Change. And if they go through like 100 conspiracies, and all I can say is if 1 to 2 of them are true, and even if all other 98 are not, then something's wrong. All they have to get right on those is 2, because it's so like, wait, what happened? And I do, this is the other thing too. Even with this lockdown, which I think we're out of today, the day we're taping this, I'm watching Dr. Oz and Dr. Phil come out and say, well, we should send the kids back to school. We'll only lose like 2 or 3% of them, but the economy will be better. And like, I don't even like children. And that upsets me that doctors are talking to how okay it is to lose 2 or 3% of the kids in school. What are you talking about? I have to stay away from this stuff because I get so discouraged. And I know there's good people out there, and I feel bad. And even this lockdown is bad. But you know what? We sent the Kurds out of their homeland with their cars in a suitcase, and the Syrians took over. This is earlier this year. And you know what? Those people are probably in tents. We're at home with the internet. Everyone relax. Everyone relax, It's
For
just
sure.
crazy how dark it can get. But
And Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz they're just corporate figureheads. So
yes, now for
they
Fox
are
News. What I'm
they are
so
they're
confused.
mouthpieces for commerce and capitalism. So they're not real doctors anymore. I mean, they may have gotten a degree many years ago, but they're the epitome of like what America has become, in my opinion, which is, they're the house of cards representing, the a solid castle. Like it's like they're a doctor, but they're an illusion. They're they're showbiz. And they're there to sell things. And, so of course they want everybody to go back to school because their livelihood depends on a strong economy. And, and since they are part of the capitalism beast, they feel themselves, being starved and dying. So it's like they feel like they're in the death throes. So they're like yelling out, like screaming. So instead of like them being a dragon who's been stabbed in the heart, they're saying things like, send the children back to school. We'll only lose a few.
I know. We'll sacrifice a few. What the hell? I know. And, and folks, I know we got political and I'm not real political, but this is really, I think there's going to be no way to avoid getting political soon enough, because I think November, the country's going to fall apart. November, December, and January, folks, start buying your toilet paper in October, because I think not only are we probably going to be in lockdown like this because maybe the virus came back, but I really think November is when you're going to see protests and people in the street and people with guns and both sides. I think we're in for a doozy. And it is like, I can't watch those clips. Like I have to unfriend or unfollow when someone's liking, Trump stuff. And I don't want to see Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham pushing this idea. We're just going to lose some people if we go back to work. We lose the same amount of people in car accidents, but car accidents aren't contagious. It's like, it scares me for humanity, which is weirdly where we started, which is, how do we get out? Where do we get that little box? Is it a box of land and a little trailer on it? What is it? Because dear Dr. Oz, how much money do you need? Do you not have enough money right now that you need to go out and push poor people back in school and have their kids die?
Yeah, he's, I just, it is a difficult spot to be in. There's a brilliant musician who lives in Nashville. He's one of my favorite musicians. His name's Matthew Ryan. And I had the pleasure to hang out with him a few times and get to know him a bit. And he said something and he's a very thoughtful, smart guy, right? And, he writes protest songs and things like that. I mean, there's always something, there's deep meaning in what he does in his art. And he said something very interesting when we were just hanging out talking once, that capitalism has become an ideology, right? Yeah. So it's no longer a form of an economic system. It's a religion. And so you have extremists who are willing to fight for this religion that they believe in. And this is just indicative. These are symptoms. These people are symptoms of that belief, of that sickness that they have, of believing that capitalism is their one and true savior. So that's why people should be willing to die for capitalism, much in the same way, people should be willing to die for God. Right. We have to save these people from themselves. You know what I mean? Right. It's the exact same thing. And so, and if it is true at the heart of all religions, where, true love is really the only way to transcend, to ascend, to, is the ultimate goal of life, to be, a being of light and love, that you have to love your enemy, right? Which is the thing that is probably the most difficult lesson of any, religious belief system, in my opinion.
Right.
So, it's a very difficult exercise for me to, but I will sit and I will try to envision myself loving and being loving toward Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And or the people who are liking these posts. Right. Now, I had to stop myself from tweeting something today. This is something that I do every once in a while that helps me get it out of my system. Mm-hmm. I will write the tweet. I will not post it, and then I'll delete it. And it makes me feel like I kind of got it out, but it was one about guns. Because there's this movement called Liberate, right? Mm-hmm. Who are taking their assault rifles and being like, you can't keep us in our houses. And basically my tweet when I first saw that was a very angry tweet about, well, why didn't you use your guns in 2008 when they stole all your money? But now you want to play grown up with your toy freedom guns.
I love
that's really cute. But where were you, 12 years ago when me and the rest of the dirty hippies were, blocking the entrances to banks and the Occupy Wall Street movement? You weren't using your freedom guns to protect your freedom then. Where were you?
Right.
You were covered in deer urine, hunting fucking, 10-point bucks, drinking beer in the woods with your buddies at 5 a.m. instead of using your guns for the reason that you say you need them.
Right.
And so the government's never going to take everybody's guns because they know they won't use them. Because they didn't use them in 2008, yeah. So they know they're never going to really use them. So they're not. So that's never going to happen, in my opinion. But to love those people, right?
I know. I used to have a joke about that, and no one liked it. And all I was saying was, since a little kid, I've heard they're taking our guns. That is the slowest take collection I've ever seen. I don't know if it's two guys with a bag walking around, but they are not collecting the guns.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's, you're so right.
That's the same thing about. This is when I really started to kind of like shake myself out of. I mean, but what you said earlier about the loose change movies is true. Like, not every conspiracy theory is true, but not every one of them are wrong either.
They start on a grain of truth, or they start on something that you can't deny.
Yeah, and we know that most of the wars that the United States have been in have been started by false flags, and we're not just, or quote unquote, wars of justice, really. I don't know. This is probably the most controversial thing I would ever say back in the day, and I think I said it on the Kook show, which really fired some people up at the time. It's not the craziest thing to imagine that 50 years in the future after 9/11, people from history won't look back and see the United States as the bad guy.
Right.
And Osama bin Laden as a freedom fighter. Now, saying something like that is highly controversial. And I'm just saying that it's a possibility. I'm not saying that that's what I believe, but there are already people who believe that. And that's why the whole thing happened in the first place, according to some people. So, people wouldn't have died for it if they didn't think that was the case. But
that's
so it's difficult.
I think that's how the machine works, because I was writing something on conspiracies that did turn out to be true. And one of them is, I forget what it was. It was a lie that got us into the Vietnam War, and the government admits it now. I can't remember what it was. They lied.
That's the Gulf of Tonkin, I believe.
Gulf of Tonkin. That was a lie. And someone said to me, that's too soon. You can't talk about it. And I was like, I can't talk about Vietnam on stage. Are you kidding? But you're absolutely right. And that's what, this is worse than the news that takes an opinion. But if you're not watching the world news, people don't know what went on with Syria and the Kurds and how we pushed out our allies. The only guys that did help us with Iraq and Saddam and all that, Trump just told the guy in Syria, no, go take their land. We'll let you. And it's like, no one knows that. No one knows what's going on with that. No one knows what we're doing in the Middle East. People are being shifted. We're not taking refugees while everyone else is, because he's afraid one of them's got a bomb. We are not it's so hard to say that in this country that we're not always the good guys. And that's not the people, that's not the soldiers, that's not the people that are fighting in Afghanistan. That's, again, the White House. And I mean everybody, not just Trump.
I mean, I would argue that the United States of America has never been the good guys.
That might be true.
I'm talking from the way we do policy and the way I'm talking about the upper levels of government and like what they are trying to get. I mean, this country was built on pain and suffering. We escaped we escaped the oppression of the British, right? By founding this country. And so what did we do? We passed the buck down, by enslaving black people, the Japanese people who are building the railroad, the Native Americans, which is conservative estimates, 15 million Native Americans were killed in the genocide in this country, which people still don't want to call it a genocide. And most of those people are of a certain racial background who do not want to talk about the genocide of the Native Americans in this country. And so this country has never been the good guy. So like this whole make America great bullshit.
Oh, the only time I think we were good guys is when we stopped. Well, not the only time, but we did help stop Hitler.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, but I know what you're saying. 15 million Native Americans? Wow.
That's the conservative estimate. Obviously, there's no super accurate number because of the times. But the latest thing I read was that's the conservative. I mean, because we can sit here and watch all of these. I mean, it seems like it's everywhere nowadays. Like the bad guy in all the shows and movies nowadays are the Nazis.
Right.
And, but we don't want to ever hold that mirror up to ourselves and be like, oh, the Germans, they were fucking psychos. But like, we never hold up the mirror to ourselves and be like, oh, our ancestors, a lot of us were fucking psychos.
Right.
In the way in the way they behaved, I think that's the thing for me that kind of is helpful in this like new world that I'm trying to move into, is separating the person from their behavior and understanding that we are all capable of, great, beautiful things. And we're also all of us capable of horrific things. Like, I don't think there's anything I'm not capable of.
Oh, I'm with you on that.
Under the right circumstances,
I
would be capable of anything.
Yeah, I could be in jail if someone hurt my dog. There are people in my dog. I know that's dumb, but there are people in my dog complex that have mean, aggressive dogs. And I was like, if you ever killed my dog, if I ever had to watch him torn apart by your dog, you better watch everyone in your house. Like, I agree with you. What's the other thing and I don't know if that show Hunters. Okay. I am wondering if Hollywood is trying to counteract that show Hunters. I'm not comfortable with it because we're fighting Nazis. We're weird superheroes. Now we're a musical. And I'm like,
the Amazon show? I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, I'm not there yet with it because it's all these things going on, yet it's so that's kind of how weird it gets. So on the one hand, though, they're showing scenes from Auschwitz that I believe probably happened. They're showing these people treated horribly. Then we see them later and they're working with a pack of superheroes and sometimes they sing songs and it's very odd. And I thought about it and I thought, how can that not be offensive? And then I also thought, are they trying to remind millennials who will watch this in a really twisted way that may have not that they missed this in history, but it's getting further and further back. And now they don't know who those guys with tiki torches are. Is Hollywood trying to make something so they go, hey, this really did happen. And the Nazis really are the bad guys. That's my only thought on Hollywood doing all of that right now. But it's weird because I have a client who I may do a podcast with, and he's German, and he ended up fighting for the Americans. But he was like 6 when the war broke out, and then he was put in Russian POW camps, and you never see it from the German side. And he's a pretty fascinating guy, but it's like, yeah, there were some good German. You know what I mean? There were some people that were. He came to this country and fought over here. So, oh my God, we are all over the place. Let me take a break, Ryan, and we'll just keep going. Let's find on the break. We'll find more things. See if we can offend everyone. Hold on. Psychic medium and buddy of mine, Terry Huberman, is with me today. Terry, you've given me so many great readings and healings, and now you've got everything together in one package. Tell me about that.
I sure do. So this package has energy healings, readings, and coaching.
Coaching, that's the best. And people, they buy the package. You give them coaching once a week?
Yeah, so we meet online once a week, and in between, there's support as well.
And who would this be for?
This is really for folks who are in indecision, needing to get into their intuition because they're blocked or stuck. They need to move forward. And so we explore what the root causes of the problems are.
And helps them get out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And what can they expect from this?
Sure. So moving from anxiousness to confidence, accessing their freedom, joy, and security, and really being in alignment with themselves so they have that clear direction, so they know, aha, this is what I need to do next to reach my goals.
So now there's something that's free so people can talk to you and see if this is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. On my website, terryhuberman.com, there is a page where you can click, and it's the intuitive coaching package. And there is a button there that says schedule a free call. So you go ahead, schedule it. We'll get on a call and you can learn more about this program, and we'll see if this is a good fit for you or not.
See if there's chemistry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's an odd date.
terryhuberman.com, TerrieHuberman. I highly recommend it, folks. Okay. So yeah, you know, when you go that high in the government, and here's my thinking on, you know, this, subsidy that we're getting, $1,200 or whatever it is, that I feel like the people were begging for it. Can we just have a little bit? And it's like, if a real accounting firm went through Washington and Ben Carson was in jail for buying a $50,000 chair, and Steve Mnuchin had to pay back every penny plus interest on his flights. And folks, you can go back to Obama's probably got some too, senators, all this wasted money and all the trades they've made with insider information. The people would remember, wait, this is our money. This was our money. We gave you this money and you abused it. And people should be getting back a lot more than $1,200 right now. That's my thinking, is that abuse and that power, and it's back to that capitalism religion. How much money do you need? How much money do you need?
I do think I think what we saw here, now granted, a lot of this is beyond the scope of my understanding. And it's what we saw here is we saw a brand new version of what happened in 2008 during the bailout. Mm-hmm. And to prevent the Occupy Wall Street movement, this time they said, give them just enough to where they won't go onto the street, right? Mm-hmm. But essentially, it's the same thing that happened in 2008. And, you know, for me, it's just the idea of these people who you know, they preach it. It's like methinks he, you know, protests too much, right? If you notice that the people who scream the loudest about capitalism are the ones who are being subsidized the most. What I mean by that is Noam Chomsky will talk about how conservatives in the Republican Party, they believe in state control, as opposed to the Democrats who believe in more federal control. And first of all, I think that the two-party system is the thing that is the most screwy about everything.
We need a third. Yeah.
Like we're still stuck in this idea that everything is binary. And people, so you have to pick a side, right? Which is the problem. With so many things. And, you know, we love the paranormal. That's the liminality. That's the space between. So it makes sense that I'm into that. But, but here's the thing about, like, here's the dirty little secret that, you know, like Newt Gingrich and all these other people, they don't want you to know, is that what they're doing by preaching state control power to the people is they're really trying to get more power to the rich who aren't like the 1% of the 1% rich, right? Because if you have a federal based system, right, it's only then the biggest companies, the richest companies can now dictate policy. Because they've got the most money, right? But if you do it on a state, if you give more power to the states to be making decisions about, business and things that are going on in their own economy, now the companies that aren't quite Amazon aren't quite like Microsoft. Now they have enough money to say to the governor, hey, we'll take our company out of this state and we'll go to another state if you don't give us what we want. And so they have more power. They have more power that way. So the rich, so it's just more rich people having power is basically what it is. And all these huge companies like Jeff Bezos not paying taxes. That's the perfect example. It's like they are being subsidized by government money, even though they're preaching capitalism. Right. And these are the companies that are funding the campaigns of the politicians who then fight for them. I mean, I think we all know about PACs and, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I think for me, the biggest takeaway is trying to understand that people are responsible for their behavior, but people are not their behavior. That at the end of the day, we all are this magic fucking stardust that doesn't have
an agenda.
That doesn't have an agenda or an expiration date. And the idea that, we're being challenged by all these things that trigger us the most. And it's easy to sit back and say later, and in hindsight, but to have that foresight is the real challenge. Even though when you have foresight, this is something I'm fascinated with right now. Having foresight in the moment can make one seem emotionless and cold to those who don't share that foresight. But for example, this quarantine isolation thing is it's going to turn out to be the best thing that ever could have happened, because people are being forced to go inside, examine their lives, see what they've committed themselves to, examine their patterns, understand that they're miserable, with the structure that they need in their life is a structure that they hate, even though they feel crazy without it, they've realized. And so now they realize they have to build a new structure. There's that point of view. And then there's the person going, my grandma's on a ventilator right now. You're being an asshole.
Right.
And so that's an example of the foresight now can make one seem emotionless and almost cold, when in fact, I think we all, at least most of us in this world that we occupy, are striving to try to have that foresight constantly, because that leads to an enlightened way of thinking about things. Having the big picture is difficult sometimes.
I think always, that's when the first time when I really started to do yoga, and there was a yogi, a real yogi, a guy, I don't know what makes you the top yogi, but he was the guy that's always in that moment. It is almost hard to talk. It is different. You do look like you're heartless or cold, but it really is actually more about faith.
Mm-hmm.
We're all going to die. We're all going to, I don't.
Yeah, we're all gonna lose these physical forms, and you and I both know just from our experience, our personal experience, and some of the things we've actually gone out and done together, that we understand. We believe that the physical form is a casing, and so I do take some solace in that, no matter how much suffering I have in this physical body. And the emotions that are attached to that physical body, and my ego, it's I know that sooner or later I'll be dead, and I'm going to look back on this from wherever the space in between, and I'm just going to be damn it, I was so close to figuring it out. I guess so. Get me back in there. I got to get this. Suit me back up. Put me back in, coach. And they're like, are you sure you're ready to go back so soon? And I'm like, yeah, get me back in there. Like, well, capitalism is still happening. Like, oh, screw it. Get me back in there. I'll figure it out.
I know. And it's so funny because it is my ego. And I feel like this is for me, I feel like my ego is calming down in my house. Like I'm setting some boundaries with people. That's my hardest thing. But I also, when people look back on near-death experiences, it's like there really is, I don't know how to say it, but it is like, this is a ride. We're lucky it's been this good so far. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why I fully believe at one point I'm going to be trying, like in a movie, I'm going to be trying to get east to my sisters when this place has fallen apart. I don't know why, but I think about how we're so comfortable now. And you nailed it. I never even thought of that with us giving us those subsidy checks. We're just comfortable enough. But if November comes around, I think that's when the poor are going to go, all right, I'm done. I am now done with all of this. Everybody in the streets go, because
look at the Egyptian Spring. That's the perfect example, which was kind of simultaneously happening with that whole Occupy movement. When the people in Egypt took to the streets and they shut down the entire country. And to the conspiracy theorists who think that the government has total control of all of us, or the elite, right? The cabal. I say to them, you can't stop the people, man. Like, there's too many of us, and they know that. I don't care how many. I don't care if they roll out every single tank they've got. If everybody took to the streets, guess what? Those people driving the tanks, they are also people.
Right.
And when they see everyone out in the streets, these are their neighbors, these are their like cousins, girlfriends, these are young men and women, most of them. They're going to be like, oh, one person's telling me to run all these people over.
Right.
Some of them may do it, but guess what? A lot of them are going to be like, something's wrong here, and I'm not going to do that. And that's what I truly believe, because, at the end of the day, there's just too many people. And if that does happen, like what you're saying, like the poor people rise up, well, guess what? Because of the widening wage gap and almost everybody in this country would consider themselves poor. So that's almost everybody taking to the streets in that situation. And we've been very lucky. And like, I'm the luckiest guy I know. I say that all the time to remind myself.
I say that too. I look at my dog and my house and my family's healthy, and I'm like, holy cow, am I lucky?
Yeah. So lucky. Like, I don't know what I did in my last life, but hey, well done, buddy. Thank you for setting me up. So I'm only hoping now. I guess I've never really thought of it until now, but like, I guess if that's not motivation, I don't know what is. Like, how like sometimes we like to, when we prepare food we're going to cook later, like it's, while we're preparing the food, we can be like, oh, this is a real pain in the ass. But then later after the food's been cooked and like, we're getting ready to cook the food, like, oh, I've already got all this prepared. This is so easy, great, and enjoyable. If we look at this life as like the prepping of the food, dicing the potatoes and all that other kind of stuff, I guess I get to really enjoy the meal in my next one, which means like I'll even be luckier in my next life,
right.
If I can stick to the recipe plan here.
Yeah, I feel like that. I think, as much as we yell about America, if you were born in it, you win. You won. You're not in a tent. You're not in the sand. You know what I mean? You're not in a country where you're not in the jungle. You're not being chased by lions. You win. But now we have the chance to make it great. No, I'm saying that like a Trump thing. I don't mean it that way. But literally, if the people took control and became uncomfortable just for a little while, I really, it's like, do you remember that car company, Saturn?
Oh, yeah. My first car was a Saturn.
Now, that was what they called a quality company. Am I right?
No haggle.
No what?
No haggle on the price, remember? That was their big thing. Like, we do not haggle the price of these cars. So they took away that whole car lot salesman thing. Like, there was no haggle on the price of a Saturn.
Wow. And also, I believe like that was a Ben and Jerry's type company where everybody was making, the better the car does, the more everyone makes. Wasn't it? Or is that what you remember? The Ben and Jerry's model that Ben and Jerry can't be making X more than the people at the bottom. Why that is great. And it's not that the government should enforce that, but why aren't there any companies like that? Like the people from Hobby Lobby, the lady had a dream that God told her that her employees should stay working and they'd be fine. They wouldn't get sick. What?
Jesus.
What are you talking? Hobby Lobby, how much money do you need? I just will never get over that. How much money do you need? I send money to people. I tithe, but I don't tithe to a church. I tithe to people. And I don't get it. I'm not rich. I don't have a house. I might someday have the glory of living on a plot in Lancaster. But until then,
oh, glory be.
But why can't I don't get it. Yeah, I'm stunned. We went off on a weird tangent here, but it's true. Okay, how about a quality company?
It is true. And like you said, you really lucky, being born specifically into the location and through the the physical machinations of the mother who was my mother. So even more specific than this country, being born into the situation I was born into, I was like,
we get to talk about this stuff without being removed from the internet, I hope.
Yeah, exactly. And, extremely lucky to be born into the fixed side of a game, right? If we want to look at it that way. I was definitely born onto the fixed side of a game when it comes to being a straight white man in America who was born in the Midwest. My family was poor when we were younger. Like, we were on food stamps, but then, my parents both climbed the ladder pretty quickly through hard work and also through the benefit of being who they were. So, and having that opportunity. So, so like I have been, I hesitate to say the word blessed because I don't think blessed applies.
And blessed has been blessed has been kidnapped. That word's been kidnapped.
Yeah, I don't like the kidnapping of words. Like the idea, because one of my big problems with the conspiracy theory world and with the people who hate conspiracy theories, is the idea that truther is a bad word, and it's even being used in like trutherism in the COVID-19 virus. Or
patriot. He's a real true patriot.
Yeah, and because at its heart, like, a truther would be someone who wants the truth.
Right.
And now it has negative connotations, unfortunately, because of the way that, everyone wanted to, discredit anybody who had questions about 9/11. And then, sanctuary started becoming a bad word in that last election as well. Right. About sanctuary cities. It's like sanctuary is one of the most beautiful words in the history of the English language. And I won't accept it being turned into a bad word, right? Snowflake is a beautiful word. Mm-hmm. And yet people will use it as an insult, depending on, who you're talking to. And it's like, yeah, well, guess what? Call me a snowflake because you're calling me beautiful, unique, crystalline. It's like, but at the end of the day, they're just words that represent thoughts, emotions, and feelings, and whatever. So, to be too attached to them would be a sign of, I don't know, maybe me being a little too primitive, I guess. But
no, I get it. What is your astrological sign?
I'm a Cancer with a Sag moon and Taurus rising.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. You're. I don't know what it is because it's almost like I think that comics. There's something about us that has that originality or that different way of thinking, and I just love your passion behind all this. Definitely a Cancer. Tough on the outside, all squishy on the inside.
Nothing but water on the inside.
Yes, all the crying. I'm crying on the inside.
Yeah, no doubt.
Wow. Well, Ryan, that was just a great podcast.
Well, we didn't even talk about Bigfoot. Maybe another time.
We didn't get to Bigfoot. We didn't get to sacred geometry, which is why I called you.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, this was a quick hour. That's for sure.
It was. Well, thank you so much for coming. Tell everybody where to find you yourself.
You can find me at ryansingercomedy.com. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Rysing, Rysing. I've got a podcast we were talking about 6 years now, me and Paranormal You. Karen's been on a bunch of times. And then I think you've even done like the live version back when I was doing live.
Oh, I told my crazy story and no one liked it. Yes, when we were in that bar, which was very
That's a very specific memory that I don't have. I don't have that feeling associated with it. But I understand a comedian's brain. Always feeling like people didn't like us.
No, oh yeah, but it's a spooky story that actually I'm learning to make funny. But anyway,
which is difficult.
Yes, it is, and you have to have the right people. But I remember that little place was totally cool.
Yeah, Echoes Under Sunset. Yeah, now no longer. No longer. I was actually doing a show there. Me and my buddy were doing a monthly show there the night that it got raided by the cops.
Wow.
And shut down. But yeah, so
what did they raid it for?
They didn't have permits for anything.
Oh.
But it was like an art gallery that was operating as a performance venue without the permits.
See, the things that happen during shows, the cops come in, everybody out. That's not funny.
Yeah, right.
When that begins, that cop had a sense of humor. This isn't funny at all.
We got some lack of noise complaints.
There's no laughter. You guys aren't funny. Get out.
Yeah. So I got the podcast, Me and Paranormal You. I also have a podcast that you're going to be on tomorrow. We're taping. Called This Is Where the Magic Happens with my buddy Angela Lovell. That one is based mostly on magic, not stage magic, but real magic and like astrology. And so that's mostly magic and astrology. And Angela has, a ton of never-ending list of crazy stories about her life.
Fascinating.
I never thought that I'd be like the normal one on the podcast. Talking about my ex-girlfriend who could shapeshift seems pretty banal compared to the life she's been living. But so yeah, those are the two podcasts, and having fun. All my stand-up is available. I got 4 albums on Spotify. I'm on Pandora, satellite radio, that stuff.
And folks, listen to those, and then put them on again and let them play because we get residuals from that stuff, even a lot of it that you're not paying for. So support the cause of
just turn the volume down and leave it on all day.
All day. Awesome, Ryan. All right. Well, then, listen, thanks for coming on. I hope we'll have you on again soon or sometime. And everybody at home, thanks for listening. And thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. And we'll all see you next time.